What makes this video about the pros and cons of living in Seattle different from the other videos on YouTube? Well, one, I actually live in the city of Seattle. And when I say live in Seattle, I mean in Seattle, not 30 minutes outside of Seattle. And two, I used to work as a teacher in Seattle public schools. Hi, my name is Gus Montgomery. In today's video, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of living in Seattle, Washington. Pro number one is the outdoors. Seattle has so many options when it comes to outdoor opportunities. And I'm not going to lie, living here for so long, I kind of take it for granted, but it's always refreshing to hear from somebody who's moved from out of state to talk about how green Seattle is, how many mountains we have, how close we are to the bodies of water. And yeah, when you reflect and think about it, yeah, Seattle's a cool place to be if you love the outdoors. We have a lot of parks in the area, such as Green Lake, Alki Beach, Golden Gardens, Gasworks, just to name a few. And also, we're in close proximity to a lot of hikes in Seattle. And technically, those hikes are not in Seattle, but you're within a 30 to 45-minute drive of various hikes, like Mailbox Peak, Poo Poo Point, just to name a couple. And also, you're in close proximity to a lot of resorts for avid skiers and snowboarders like Stevens Pass and Snoqualmie. So if you are an outdoor enthusiast, you have a lot of options living in Seattle. Pro number two is year-round events. There's so many things to do as far as events in the Seattle area, starting with remodeled Climate Pledge Arena, which was formerly known as Key Arena. At Climate Pledge Arena, you'll see big musical acts, comedic performances, and sporting events. We have all the pro teams that you need, except for the NBA, but we're going to get that team soon. We also have smaller concert venues for comedians and musical acts and plays as well. We have places like the Neptune, Paramount, the Crocodile, just to name a few. We also have a vast array of beer and wine festivals throughout the year. We also have a really good arts and theater scene. We also have various adult recreational sports leagues for all those adults that want to stay in shape. We have kickball leagues, volleyball leagues, and basketball leagues. There's so many things to do in the city for all types of interest. Pro number three is the job economy. We have a very robust job market in Seattle, highlighted by companies such as Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Boeing, just to name some. There are a lot of tech startups founded in the city of Seattle. It's a great opportunity for a lot of people to move to a city with such a strong job market. Pro number four is pretty subjective, but this is my personal opinion. Seattle is a very laid back city. I don't have any scientific research to push this narrative, but based on my experiences and going and visiting to other US cities and talking to people from other cities that have moved here, people in Seattle seem to be very chill and laid back. And honestly, that could be seen as a con as well, which I'll talk about later in the video. This could be due to maybe the dark and gloomy weather. More people are keeping to themselves, so they seem more laid back and chill. I'll let you decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing. People seem to enjoy living in the city. Yeah, it might not be as fast and upbeat as other major cities. It may take some time to get used to, but overall, people seem to enjoy just the chill atmosphere of Seattle. Number five is Seattle is the best summer city. And yes, there are actually articles online that show that Seattle is the number one or number two best rated city in the United States during the summer months. That's because of our weather. In the summer, it's usually around 80 degrees consistently. So when you have 80-degree weather, you could argue that 80 degrees is like the perfect summer weather. It's not too hot. And with the city of Seattle, us being indoors for 9 months out the year because of the rain, dark, and gloom, it's refreshing for the city residents to see this summer weather. So it seems like Seattle is way more upbeat it seems like there's way more events happening, which they are because there's less rain. So those 3 months out the year, Seattle is one of the most upbeat cities in the United States. You have a lot of beer, wine, concert, festivals, jam-packed in the 3 months, and everybody seems to be outside enjoying themselves because they know the other 9 months out the year, it's not going to be like that. All right, con number one is the cost of living. Rent prices and median home prices in Seattle are higher than the national average. When you look at the median home prices in Seattle, it's near the $900,000 range. Anytime you see a city with a median home price close to $1 million, that creates a lot of unfortunate situations, circumstances for families and individuals that cannot afford it. All right, con number two is gentrification. I know that this is happening in a lot of other major US cities, but Seattle is no exception. And there's a lot of local organizations that are trying to keep families who grew up in the city of Seattle to stay and have opportunities to live in Seattle. But it's becoming hard based on the cost of living. And it's interesting because you would meet a lot of people from out of state that would come to Seattle and have no idea about the history of Seattle because it looks a lot different than it did historically. For example, if you look at neighborhoods like Capitol Hill and Central District, it's hard to tell now, but those are historically Black neighborhoods. And I think it's very important to know the history of the city that you're living in. And hopefully, the families that have roots in Seattle will be given opportunities by the city to stay in the area that their family grew up. Con number three is the homelessness. Now, there's a lot of talks between the city and local officials about how to make it better. But if you visit Seattle for the first time, it's pretty obvious and it's hard to ignore. You see people living in tents in a lot of different neighborhoods in Seattle, and it's very unfortunate to see that there's so many people living without the basic necessities. Now, the severity of homelessness does vary by each neighborhood in Seattle. You see a lot more in places like downtown and Belltown. Hopefully the city finds ways to make it better, but as of right now, that is an issue affecting the city. Con number four is the rain slash seasonal depression. Now, Seattle is known to be a rainy city. If you actually look at the total accumulation of rain in inches per year, Seattle does not rank that highly versus other major US cities. Where it does rank highly is the number of days that rains. On average, Seattle has about 150 to 160 days of rain per year. It's not a very intense rain, it's more of like a constant drizzle of rain that's really annoying, especially when you combine it with the dark and gloomy skies of Seattle, which ties into seasonal depression, where a lot of people who move to Seattle seem to get. There seems to be no sun for about 9 months out the year, as I mentioned earlier in the video. That's why the 3 months of summer seem so much more fun because of these 9 months that we have of the rain, dark, gloom, seasonal depression. So if you're new to this city, be aware that seasonal depression does affect a lot of people who are used to seeing sun year round. Seattle is not one of those cities. The Seattle rain is not as heavy as our reputation seems to suggest, but it's just the number of days that it rains, plus the dark and gloomy skies. Con number five is the Seattle freeze. The Seattle freeze is a widely held belief that when you move to the city of Seattle, that's hard to make friends. Residents of Seattle have been called cold, distant, and standoffish. Now, I have met people who have had issues and challenges in making friends, but on the other side, I've met people who have made friends very easily when they moved to Seattle. In my opinion, there seems to be an agreement there's some sort of Seattle freeze. But at the same time, once you find your hobbies, your interests, and put yourself out there, more than likely you will find your friend group when you move to the city. And as I mentioned before, there's so many different types of events that happen in the city of Seattle. So at some point, in my opinion, you will find that group of friends, but the Seattle free stigma is there, so be prepared. All right, that is it for the pros and cons of living in Seattle, Washington. If you value this content, please like and subscribe to his YouTube channel. I'll continue to provide more value going forward. Till next time, take care.